There are no best practices for content. You can literally do the opposite of what the experts say and win. Quantity or quality? That's the question that's asked constantly, but it's the wrong question. You can literally make a TED Talk on both sides of every so-called rule when it comes to content creation. Some creators post once a month and crush it. Other creators post multiple times a day and crush it. Same with video length, editing, lighting. Everyone's got a different take and a different style. So if you're chasing the right format, you're always gonna second guess yourself. And I've wrestled with the answers to these contradictions for years, and especially recently, as this is my first off season as a full-time content creator, which is why, because it's something I'm struggling with, it's today's Thursday therapy. The only answer that actually works is this: do the kind of content you can execute consistently. Create the type of content today that will keep you creating 5 years from now. So if you're in the content world, you know the contradictions that I'm talking about. If you've hung around this far just because you follow my content and you're interested about what's going on in my brain, the contradictions that I'm talking about, one is video length. You get some people that say, hey, a 45-minute episode is perfect because that's where the traditional drop-off happens in a podcast. Other people say, no, gotta go a full 3 hours. Look at Joe Rogan. That's when you really get deep with your guest. For short form content, what's the right strategy? Is a 30-second punchy video great, or is a 2-minute slow burn even better? Both can work. Posting cadence, another contradiction. You see people on this platform that have huge success and they post once a month and it's a well thought out video. You see other people that are posting multiple times a day. Production quality. This is a big one the past few years with the TikTokification of things, where low quality videos, some would argue, are better because they're more raw. Some would argue more authentic and connect with people just as if you're talking to them, versus other people, a curated aesthetic shows professionalism, high production quality, and like, yo, this dude must be legit. Topic selection. That's another big one. Do you go after the biggest story even though your take is mid? Or do you go with a niche topic with a phenomenal take, even if the audience isn't as big? On both sides of all those dynamics, you can find someone that'll pound the table for their lane. The whole idea of best practices is tough, and I feel like I'm struggling with it more so now than I have ever in my content creation journey, because for the first few years as I was getting going with content, it was just about, hey, can I get up a high quality post that's well thought out, that's edited well, that sort of deal. But then what's happened recently for me is, candidly, my subscriber growth and follower growth across platforms has slowed. My videos are still performing, but now that I'm in this mindset of, hey, the past few years, it was just about, hey, can I get a post up? So, because I had a day job. And so, I didn't have the luxury of, hey, thinking about how to be innovative or super creative in this lens, because I didn't have the time or the energy. Versus now that it's my sole focus, I'm putting more thought to that of, hey, now that I have X amount of more time, what's the best way to use that time? And I'm in a unique spot, and those of you that follow me on other platforms will probably appreciate this, where, I have multiple lanes. I'm a hardcore football guy, and some of you guys have landed on my page because of that. I get looped into my wife's content as more of like the husband vibe there. I do some, fun trends and announcing bits that are more kind of free flowing and a little bit different. That's another lens. I'm a huge golf guy, so you'll see golf content at different times. And there's all these different lenses, which then gets into a whole other question about, hey, do you niche down? And you could get someone that argues, hey, that's the way to grow the quickest. You could also get the next person that says, well, when you niche down to just one lane, you're ultimately going to box yourself in, because eventually you're going to get tired of that lane and it's going to be harder psychologically to pivot over to the next lane. And it's just this constant juggling act that at this stage of my content career, I find myself struggling with the whole idea of best practices more than I ever have, because best practices gives us a sense of comfort, I think, as content creators, and really any line of work that you do, because you want to feel like if you're sitting down and putting in the effort or putting in the work, that then you can figuratively check the boxes and say, yo, I'm doing what it takes to have success. But what's changed, and this is what's so fascinating, and when people do ask me, hey, vet my social media pages, like what advice would you have? The landscape of social media has changed over the past 5 years. 5 years ago, I would argue one of the first pieces of advice with content creation is just, hey, post. whatever it takes just to get something up, because the number one hurdle for most people early on is the insecurity around putting yourself out there. But nowadays, with the rise of TikTok and it being easier than ever to create, there's more creators than ever. Just posting, just clicking post, that's not going to get it done. Your content has to be good. Well, then what is good? Well, then hence the struggle of all the contradictions of all the different lanes that I've talked about. You know what? This topic really came to a boiling point for me when I was game planning my YouTube thumbnails. Now that I'm posting on YouTube long form more, I talked with one person that I respect immensely in their content brain. And it was like, hey, look at the best YouTube sports channels, the ones that are doing deeper dives. They focus on just the subject of what they're talking about. They don't busy the thumbnail by putting their own face in it. And it creates a certain aesthetic and a certain vibe to their video that feels more professional. That makes a lot of sense. I talked to the very next person and it was like, Max, what are you doing? Why is your face not in the thumbnail? Your viewer needs to know that, hey, it's that guy, this Max Brown guy that's talking about this video. If you're not putting your face in the thumbnail, how do people know it's you? That makes a ton of sense as well. So my two pieces of advice on this whole topic is, one, as long as what you're doing is intentional, to me, that's a win. If I'm going to do one YouTube style and there's a method to the madness and I'm testing it, good. As long as I'm seeing those results and adjusting those results down the road and not just continuing to hammer away without results, that to me is a win. Intentionality with the content length or the hook. Am I intentionally having it be a slow burn, or am I intentionally saying the first 3 seconds are the most important? I can't waste a single beat. The problem I think people run into is when they lose intentionality, and oftentimes it happens when they delegate the work to someone else, and it's kind of, hey, out of sight, out of mind. I'll sit down and film something, but then someone else edit it, and at that transition point, sometimes the intentionality can get lost, and it's because, to bring up an earlier point, I would argue people that had tons of success in like 2013, 14, 15, 16, where you could sit down and just offload and go hands-off mode when it comes to content and hand it off to a copywriter or an editor or something, that no longer works. I think you have to be hands-on with your content nowadays. And two, create today what will be sustainable and allow you to create 5 years from now. If you're creating TikTok trends and you love it and it's going to allow you to stay in the game 5 years from now, great. But if you're forcing the issue to create TikTok trends when it's not really about your personality, which then will lead you to be frustrated, burnt out, and then 3-5 years from now, you're like, screw the social media thing, that ain't it. If you're a long form guy and like the deep personal relationships and love the podcast side of things, well, then maybe 45-minute, 3-hour episodes, that's your cup of tea. Obviously, there's growing, adjusting, and pivoting along the way, but I think there will always be a place in content for short form and for longer form, allowing things to breathe. When I self-assess my content, I think there's two big vulnerabilities that I have in terms of the types of content that I'm not making that I need to make. One is YouTube long form. That's why I started doing that earlier this year. I think I branded myself as like the short form, punchy football take guy, and I need to build a deeper relationship with my audience, build this skill set of being able to host, longer form segments. And not everyone consumes takes in 45 to 90 second elements. And oh, by the way, the whole YouTube or the TikTok platform may be going away and the power of YouTube. There's a bunch of different strategic reasons, but YouTube long form is one. And the other one, which is kind of funny because it's literally the exact opposite, is TikTok trends. Hate it or love it, TikTok trends and the shareability of taking a viral sound and then creating a message around your niche or interests is a huge way to win on social. A lot of my content is scripted out. It's not following trends of what's going on mainstream. That's another vulnerability for me, both of which I'm trying to get better at. 3 lessons I've learned about sustainability and just longevity in the content game over the past 5 years. And there's been levels to my content creation journey. At one point I posted once a week. Other point I was 3 or 5 times a week, only football. Now it's has much more variety. And that's the first lesson is, one, I will never be a single niche guy. There's a lot of people and a lot of content creators that have grown immensely by doing one specific content type. Their audience learns that that's what they're going to get each time they sit down. And as a result, they're able to grow because of that. For me, I'll never be that way because I never say never, but because of the different interests, I know I'll ultimately get to a point where I'll feel stuck if I'm not able to share all the interests I have. 2, you're gonna have phases where you drop the ball or where your content doesn't perform. Don't lose momentum. If you've seen my recent Thursday therapy video about content creation being like a game of baseball where it's about the quality of at-bats, these are tied together. Literally last week is a perfect example. I've been going strong about 2 months of consistently posting YouTube long form. For the first time in this new cadence that I had 3 travel trips all within the last 10 days. Lost momentum, didn't stick to my delivery cadence. 5 years ago, I would have got discouraged. That week that I missed probably would have turned into 2 or 3 weeks. It's more about, hey, those phases happen, get back on the saddle. And then 3, and this is probably the most important one, and it's not even content specific, it's probably life specific, but everyone's got their own lane. One of the hardest things as a content creator I've noticed is when you've been at it, the energy you've put in for years, and then some new person that you see or you follow or you know comes in and they see tons of success right away, you're obviously happy for them, but then you're like, damn, man, why is my effort not necessarily getting rewarded like theirs is? That's life though. Don't get me wrong. That's life. What learnings can you take from them? And I've tried to flip the script of, rather than it being, hey, a poor me situation, it's more of a, what are they doing? How can I get inspired from what they're doing? And what can I incorporate from their path into my content to get over maybe a plateau that I'm at? There's best practices and then there's optimizing. I think the best practices can mess with your head, especially in the 2025 content environment, and focusing more on optimizing both your content specifically and your process. That's where I'd keep my focus at. As always, Thursday Therapy is about things that I have struggled with or things that I'm actively struggling with. This is the first one in a little while where it's an active struggle for me. Again, this is my first football offseason with no day job, which has allowed me to pour a lot more onto the content side of things. I appreciate you guys watching all these videos and a little insight into what's going on upstairs in the 5-head. If you like this video, hit the like button down below. Subscribe to not miss any videos. Coming out with YouTube videos every single week. Even though I missed the YouTube long form last week, we got shorts coming out all the time. See you next time.